performs, you take care of him. Yes, that would be in theory. We should note Steelers GM Kevin Colbert said Friday that the team would not renegotiate the Browns deal because the club does not renegotiate contracts with players who have more than 1 year remaining on deals. Jerome Bettis, the bus in the house. Always good to see you. Thank you for being with us. This is a tough one. Who's more valuable here, Gronk or Brown?
I think both of them are just as valuable to their respective teams. So I don't think there is one better than the other one. For New England, they're a more tight end based team. So Gronk fits, he's their number 1 threat. So it makes a lot of sense. And now bringing in Martellus Bennett, that's when Gronk had another tight end opposite of him, that's when he had his biggest year ever. He had 90 receptions, 1,300 yards. He led the league in just about every category from a tight end perspective. And so they want to go back to that, much like the Steelers are a pass-oriented team. As much as it hurts me to say that, they want to throw the football. And Ben Roethlisberger is the best player on that team, so you've got to have a great receiver for that offense to go. Antonio Brown is that guy. So both guys are the number 1 guys at their respective positions in the NFL and for their team.
Boss, that's not how it works. You got to choose a side, brother. Come on.
What's your gut? Gronk or Brown right now?
Hey. Which guy is worth it?
I'll take care of the bus in a minute.
You want me to go? You want me to go? Okay.
I'll take care of him in a second.
Let me take care of him. I should.
I'm going to get on you.
Look, the answer is Antonio Brown. However, the more I look at it, the less I see it as a definitive answer. My knee-jerk reaction is, come on, man, you can't compare a tight end to Antonio, bruh, but this is not just any tight end. First of all, the tight end always has that, a great tight end, always creates that mismatch with the DBs and the linebackers and who can really cover him. You need to devote 2 guys to him and all that. Secondly, you brought up the 2 tight end set. Aaron Hernandez, hate to bring up his name, but they were unstoppable and now they bring in Bennett, and so maybe they have a kind of similar. Bennett's at least a B+, at least at that position, and so maybe they have the kind of a similar thing going on. Also, you see when Gronk is healthy, the Patriots are an unstoppable super team. When he's not, Belichick and Brady, they're still going to make the playoffs, but they're not going to win a Super Bowl. But when Gronk is healthy, it's like, oh, they're the odds-on favorite. I mean, he has an enormous impact. Then you look at the numbers, you go, look, I play daily fantasy. I know that Antonio Brown's the most valuable guy who's not this guy's insane. Gronk has the same number of touchdown passes over the catches over the last 2 seasons and more yards per catch than Antonio Brown.
So it is harder.
Stephen A., it is harder to find Gronk production at the position than it is to approximate Antonio Brown production at the position.
You know something? If I had some water right now, I might throw it on you, Max. And you don't start with me. Don't you start with me. Don't you start with me right now.
Good argument.
Let me stop it. Well, it's my turn.
Okay.
It's my turn. Ooh, this blasphemy. The blasphemy.
I'm just,
enough. You know he played on the Steelers.
I see that.
I know he played on the Steelers.
You guys got a chunky ring right there.
He's got an affinity for the Steelers.
Let me tell you something right now. Okay. I just want to just throw this out there. Is anybody aware of the fact that over the last 2 years, Antonio Brown has had 265 catches? Is anybody aware? I'm not finished. It's a rhetorical question. I don't need answers.
136 last year.
Listen, and 129 before. You want me to do math class for you? Stop it. Just listen to me right now. Listen to me, because it made me emotional. It's your fault. It's your fault, Jerome.
Okay.
Over the last 3 years, Antonio Brown has had 375 catches. 375 catches, okay? This dude, by the way, he's returned all 3 seasons. He's returned at least 1 punt for a touchdown. So he's a kickoff returner, he's a punt returner, and he's a receiver, catching 375 catches, all right? 375 in 3 seasons. Last year, 1,800+ yards. The year before that, 1,600+ yards. The year before that, 1,404 yards. And we're talking about Rob Gronkowski. Look, I understand Rob Gronkowski, the best tight end in football. I understand that the way he's going is a future Hall of Famer. I understand the 2 tight end set. The fact that you got Tom Brady, who Bill Belichick has never put an elite offensive line in front of him. This dude needs to get off the ball quicker, which means you're throwing shorter passes, which means that Rob Gronkowski is that much more vital, particularly with the lack of durability on the part of an Edelman or an Amendola, somebody who always ends up concussed. Brandon LaFell is no longer going. He's in Seattle, so that's a non-factor. In the end, what it comes down to, Jerome Bettis, you understand, is that Antonio Brown is on another level because he's multifaceted. Max, he does more than one thing. He plays more than one position. He's utilized much more than Rob Gronkowski. The numbers show that he produces more. Just a numbers game alone.
Foaming at the mouth. You got to get this guy a shot.
And last but not least, Jerome, you wish they had a running game. It upsets you that they're passing the football. Maybe if dudes could stay healthy or didn't find themselves, you know, I mean, in trouble. Maybe if they were Jerome Bettis and you could rely on them being on the field, maybe there would be more of a running game.
Okay. All right.
You and Max.
I got more right here.
I'm waiting. I'm waiting.
Go
ahead, Max.
I'll let you hit him.
What you are overlooking in all this is the strategic value that any team gets from having something where there's scarcity at the position. Now,
Preach.
what do I mean this?
Preach.
What do I mean by this?
Y'all go ahead.
You look at Odell Beckham Jr.'s numbers as a rookie.
No, it's good.
As a rookie, Odell Beckham, when you look at the totality of his numbers against all different kinds of coverages, the numbers he put up as a rookie were better than Antonio Brown's that year. And since then, you could look at Odell Beckham, you could look at Julio Jones when he's on the field. You could look at guys where you can, even if you want to make the argument, and I will agree with you, because ultimately I also take Antonio Brown. I just think it's much closer than you realize at first blush. You can look at Antonio Brown and say, yeah, he is number one. He puts up the biggest numbers, the eyeball test. He's the top guy. But you can approximate his value with various other receivers. You cannot approximate Rob Gronkowski's value at the position.
Oh, and that's all about Rob. Tom Brady has nothing to do with that.
Well,
Tom Brady has nothing to do with that.
Roethlisberger got nothing to do with it.
Excuse me. Oh, wait a minute. I recall 4 to 5 games last year, Antonio Brown doing exactly what he did with Landry Jones and Michael Vick as a quarterback.
What do you think Gronkowski's going to do with Garoppolo?
A couple games he did not.
Well, listen, a couple of games. Oh,
Stephen A., what do you think? What do you think Gronkowski's
You can't say that. When Michael Vick was in, Antonio Brown
listen, you can't catch the ball for yourself. I mean, somebody got to throw the ball. They didn't throw the ball. I mean, what did you get? Don't get me started on the game against the Ravens when he threw it 10 feet over his head.
So Max made a point about approximating the receiver, right?
Okay.
The next closest receiver to Antonio Brown, Julio Jones, who tied him in receptions and led him in yards. Okay? So this is not an out-of-the-world comparison at the wide receiver position. Now you look at the tight end position, Gronk, number one.
Everyone else like number 10.
But here's the point that I'm making. But here's the point that I'm trying to make.
Okay.
As much as you want to say Antonio Brown is the clear more valuable player, it's really respective to the team. Value is in the team. So you look at Gronk. Gronk, he plays the wide receiver position as well. So he's not just a tight end. Okay, he lines up at the wide receiver. So he is, okay, moving around. He's not just
That's the same thing Jimmy Graham tried to claim, and that didn't work for him.
Gronk does it. But Gronk does it. It's not even...
I understand that.
So the point that I'm trying to make to you is when we look at Antonio Brown and we look at Gronk, who's more valuable, in which offense?
Because it still affects the win-loss record more.
Look, Stephen A.,
and when you look at Gronk and you look at New England, they are perennial playoff team.
Yeah, but if push comes to shove, I will agree with Stephen A. I believe the answer is Antonio Brown. My only point is when it was first asked, I was like, oh, is this even a question? And by the time I was done thinking about it, I said, I'll still take Antonio Brown, but it is damn close. And Gronk is
You have to look at
I don't think,
the values.
Y'all gonna, especially you, and you just move out the way. I'm just done with you.
All I'm saying is,
right now.
I'm not trying to be a homer. All I want to show is that I'm not trying to be a homer.
Hold on. Let me
and that when you look at perspective-wise,
I got it.
You can look at
I got it. Pittsburgh Steelers who shouldn't be allowed in the Steelers camp right now. Let me turn to you, Max Kellerman. Are you not the guy that just sat up here on the air? You had the camera look at you the other day and said, "What? What's the problem, Molly? What's the problem, Molly?"
Don't use my own words against me.
You trying to side?
You know, everybody just trying to side across, man.
Hold on. All right, is it not you? Is it not you that caught the camera to look at you and say, Tom Brady is the greatest quarterback ever? That was you. Yep. Is it not you that said, and by the way, Bill Belichick is the greatest coach ever? So let me get this straight. You just went on some soliloquy about Rob Gronkowski, and it's damn close, but no mention of the greatest quarterback ever. No mention of the greatest coach ever. No mention of the system that has benefited not just Tom Brady, but Rob Gronkowski, who's a stud, and I get that, and I know how elite he is. When you look at Antonio Brown and 375 catches, 1,400 one year, 1,600 the other year, 1,800 last year, 375 catches, punch returns, kicks returns. What are y'all talking about?
Time out 1 second.
What?
Time out. Everything is true about Brady and Belichick. You act like Ben Roethlisberger and Mike Tomlin are chopped liver.
Yeah.
No.
Ben Roethlisberger going to the Hall of Fame.
No, but you don't hear people talking about Mike Tomlin's system.
True.
You hear that about Belichick.
Tomlin's a great coach.
Stop it. Yeah.
Tomlin's a great coach.
And Ben Roethlisberger is vastly underrated.
Yeah.
Vastly.
I don't think so. I think he's a Hall of Famer.
So what I take away from this conversation is it's Gronk. Jerome, thank you.
No.
So much. I'm kidding.
All I'm saying is that it's closer to even.
I'm kidding. I'm so kidding.
Okay.
The media gets on James Harden all the time. But now his former teammate Kevin Durant has his back. We'll react to what KD said back to the NBA would First Take.
Jerome Bettis ain't coming with us to Pittsburgh. He's not coming.
Association now, though. After making the All-NBA first team 2 seasons ago, James Harden failed to make an All-NBA team this season. Many have criticized Harden for his lack of defense and effort at times. Now, his former teammate Kevin Durant has come to his defense, telling the Houston Chronicle, quote, "Everybody on the outside doesn't really appreciate what he brings. Anybody that can put up 29 points, 7 rebounds, 7 assists, and not make the All-NBA team, that's like a sin to even think about not putting a guy like that on the All-NBA team." Stephen A., does KD have a point about Harden?
No, he does not. Where are you going to put him? When you consider the year that the Golden State Warriors have had, when you consider LeBron, when you consider the greatness of Kevin Durant along with Russell Westbrook, and the down year that the Houston Rockets had, and the reason that James Harden was in the news, what do you expect? Let me be very, very clear about James Harden. James Harden is an absolute stud. He is a superstar offensive player. Defensively, sometimes he shows up, sometimes he doesn't. His greatest year as a defender was fresh off of playing with Coach K. In the, I think it was the pre-Olympics or whatever it was a couple of years back. And then he came on the basketball court and he showed more of a concerted effort on the defensive side of the ball. James Harden can do whatever's required. He's that elite of a talent. The problem is he doesn't always want to do it on the defensive end of the floor. Now, in his defense, that may have to do with the offensive responsibilities that he may have, carrying the load for the Houston Rockets. And because of that, sometimes you conserve your energy because everybody's not going to be Jordan or Kobe or LeBron where they never let up on the defensive end of the floor. But nevertheless, that's been the case with James Harden. So Kevin Durant is not wrong for coming to the defense of his former teammate who never should have left OKC. The Thunder should have come up with the extra $4 or $5 million to keep him on board, no doubt. They probably would have won a championship in OKC before Kevin Durant decided to leave had James Harden never left. But nevertheless, he did leave. And Kevin Durant's not wrong for highlighting his greatness because James Harden is great. But he is a bit disingenuous in ignoring why people are somewhat critical of James Harden. Another thing to bring in the point, it is widely believed that James Harden is the reason that Kevin McHale was fired after 11 games into the season. He had a meeting with management, and the next thing you know, Kevin McHale is gone. Now, that may not be fair to James Harden because clearly he's categorically denied such a thing. But nevertheless, there are people who have been saying that about him in NBA circles.
And how'd that work out without McHale?
And how did that work out? Not very, very well, even though I do believe Bickerstaff did a damn good job considering the turmoil that surrounded the team. You've got a guy like Dwight Howard who's now in Orlando. Some people feel he's fell off and he's got a lot to prove. But Dwight Howard would make the case that, damn, I can't dribble the ball and pass it to myself. People should be setting things up for me and giving me the ball. And sometimes James Harden would look off. We could also look at James Harden and as electric and elite and sensational as he is as a basketball player. There's usually a lot of dribbling that takes place before he takes a shot. Well, how does that work when you got 4 teammates around you who aren't necessarily seeing the basketball that much? So again, Kevin Durant is not wrong when he talks about the greatness of James Harden, but considering the year that he had and what was the storylines that surrounded him and some of the cynicism that comes attached to him, you're not telling the whole story when you tell why he wasn't picked first team, because clearly people are saying it ain't all about the numbers. Sometimes numbers do lie just a touch.
Kevin Durant is wrong when he calls James Harden a great player. Now, I want to be very clear about this. Yep, I want to be very clear about this.
I'm sorry.
He's not a great player.
You're saying James Harden's not a great player?
He's a very good player. He's not a great one.
Go ahead.
Now, and by the way, Carmelo Anthony, same thing right now.
Well, right now, yeah.
Yep.
Well, go ahead. Go ahead. I'll get back to that James Harden thing.
I'll get to the difference between good and great in a second. But
yes.
This is what, first of all, the league is changing under these players' feet. So some of the stuff they could do really well, for example, in the previous era, score in isolation, is much less valued now. And fans are getting more sophisticated. If you don't play defense, they recognize, see that other guy, maybe you're a little better in terms of, not even offensively, in terms of scoring the ball, but he actually plays defense. Here's the thing about Harden, and I want to make it very clear. There's a difference between a good player, a very good player, who really doesn't have the potential to be great. We've seen enough. We know it's not in there anywhere. And a guy like Harden. When I watch Harden play, I go, the question I always ask myself if you're supposedly elite in the NBA is, can you be the best player on a championship team? The answer for Harden is yes, it's possible. It's in there somewhere because we've seen him play defense at times. We see what he can do when he's playing the right way. He's capable of it. It's in there, but it hasn't come out of him yet. He was very bad in the finals when he was on OKC. Fine, he was coming off the bench. He and Westbrook and Durant somehow were a little inefficient, the three of them together. They were kind of less than the sum of their parts. The whole was less than the sum of its parts. I get all that. But if you really watch Harden throughout most of his career, does he rack up a lot of assists? Yeah. When do those assists come? Dribble, dribble, dribble. He's very good at getting to the line, but if he can't get his own shot... Nobody's
better at getting to the line.
He's amazing. And that's a high percentage thing to do, and so is shooting threes the way he does. But if he can't do that, he waits till the shot clock's almost up. Then he passes the ball to someone. They're like, we've been standing around getting cold. Now I don't really have an open look. And like, he gets his assists that way at times. I don't see him get the hockey assist too often, even though he's capable of doing it. What Durant is reacting to with Harden is what players frequently react to with guys like Harden and guys like Carmelo. A player knows better than anyone how hard it is to do what Harden does so well at the highest level. They know how much work goes into it. And the fact that Harden can do so many things so well, his peers recognize that's so hard to do. He's great. But it's not just that you have the tools, it's how you apply them. And James Harden has all the tools, does not apply them in a way where you can say that guy is a great NBA player.
Couple of things. Number one, he's a career 85% shooter from the free throw line. He shot 86% from the free throw line the last 3 years, so we know that.
High percentage player.
Secondly, Kevin Durant wasn't just reacting to what you just articulated. Primarily, he was reacting to the cynicism aimed in the direction of a friend of his and a former teammate, because that's what Kevin Durant tends to do these days. Thirdly, and more importantly, when you talk about what James Harden doesn't do on occasion, That's the difference between you and I in terms of our definition of greatness. My definition of greatness is a couple of things. There are times when James Harden didn't show up in big moments. Like, he was mad at me for years or whatever. I mean, we say hi and bye, but, I mean, because he has a damn right, and they better get over it because I'm going to keep telling the truth. The fact of the matter is that in that finals against Miami, there was an APB out on him. We couldn't find him. There were times when he was wide open at the free throw line, wide open at foul line extended, etc., elbow, and literally would not take shots, which is something we're not accustomed to seeing James Harden do. His talent is unquestionable, but he didn't show up in big moments. Last year, he didn't show up in big moments at the time. In the playoffs a couple of years back, even when they came back from that deficit against the Clippers and went on that like 49-9 run in that Game 6, James Harden was on the bench. They were doing that without him on the floor.
He's a one-way player, which you brought up. He's a one-way player.
But here's the thing. This is why I say you still can't deny his greatness. Despite all of those things you mentioned, and they're not wrong, you said the most important thing. What guys work diligently to pray and hope they can acquire, this guy does in his sleep. This guy averaged 29. He averaged 25. He averaged 26 a game. Shoots better than 45% from the field. Gets to the free throw line at will. Got a nasty handle. Can play the point. Can do so many different things. That I'm speaking about is what he possesses, his skill set. I'm not always saying results.
His skill set is the toolbox. He's got all the tools.
Well, that means you can be greater.
But how do you apply them? But the ball sticks with him. His teammates don't like it.
And I'm saying to you that there's a difference. Just because you're great doesn't mean someone isn't great to her. But it doesn't take away from the fact that you're great. It's just an elevated level. We got a whole bunch of Hall of Famers. Does everybody deserve to be in the same room as Magic and Michael?
Is James Harden an MVP caliber player for real? Is he an MVP?
I thought he was, not this past season, but the season before.
I disagree. I don't think
the season before. I
think he should be.
The season before, I thought
he can be, but I don't think he is right now.
Not right now, based on last season.
Based on last season. You're going very good. Right. You're sticking with great. Different definitions, though. D. Wade spoke with Kerry Champion at SportsCenter Sunday's Conversation. What did we learn about Wade going to Chicago? The newest Bull will react. Tim returning to his hometown.
Fair.
Yeah?
You're talking about one-on-ones.
Mm-hmm.
The one-on-one is structured for the quarterback and wide receiver to win all the time. No pass rush. Quarterback just sits there and pats the ball. The wide receiver runs his route exactly how he wants to run. There's no pressure involved on the quarterback side. We used to get beat like this all the time as a defensive back. I don't care who you are. In one-on-ones, it's set up for the wide receivers to win, and that's totally unfair.
Yeah, one-on-ones, like in the NFL, when Norman's on Odell Beckham, it's set up for the wide receiver to win.
No, that's totally different.
Burnt him all day.
Yeah, but
dropped a couple passes, but
thank you.
Okay,
that doesn't mean.
Okay,
when you
but it's not because Norman was in the. Where was Norman?
That's not getting burned when he dropped the pass.
Where was Norman?
Doesn't matter. Did he drop the ball?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is what I'm saying to you. With pressure, it's a totally different game. And we saw Josh Norman. Listen, am I saying Josh Norman is the elite of the elite, like Richard Sherman? No.
That's what we want to know. Is he worth this money?
I think he's worth the money if someone's willing to pay it. Yes, you are worth the money.
But you're
Simple
saying
as that.
He's not elite.
No. But if you were a GM and you had to price talent, is he worth being the highest paid corner in the NFL?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But if I am a team like the Washington Redskins and I feel like I need a corner, listen, cornerbacks are just like quarterbacks, are just like left tackles. They don't walk around and they don't grow on trees.
Right.
You have to find a guy that can willingly go 50-50 on the outside and match up with Dez Bryant, Odell Beckham, whoever it is.
You still got to find that guy.
And that's, well, I feel like the Washington Redskins make that decision that said they saw what he did against Odell Beckham, which he played okay. I mean, it wasn't great, but when they saw what he did with Dez Bryant, and he shut Dez out for 4 quarters. So that's what you want, and that's what a lot of teams do. They see a guy in a different division or a different conference, and they say, this is how he matched up with certain guys. We want him on this team, and is he worth the $15 million? Yes, he's worth the $15 million to the Washington Redskins.
I don't like this.
Why?
I actually agree with Darren. He's not wrong. Here's the deal, Max. First of all, Josh Norman can play. That's number one. Secondly, Odell Beckham Jr., there's no shame in losing to him. This brother's on another level. We understand he dropped one pass. We understand that there was a couple of times he got open. We understand that he lost his head a little bit, and had that not been the case, it would have been one of those situations where essentially what it would have come down to is that Odell Beckham Jr. may have ended up getting the better of Josh Norman even more so than he actually did. I get all of that. But here's the bottom line. When you look at it, pay attention to what's transpiring. You got Joe Barry and his zone schemes. You've got the fact that Josh Norman is a system player. Now, if you hired him to be a shutdown corner a la Deion Sanders, of course there's a problem. Where I agree with Darren, where we're being unfair to Josh Norman, even though Josh Norman is capable of covering, the reality is that when you looked at Carolina's defense, there was some zone going on. He was assisted. You had the crew, Kuechly and Thomas and the boys. You know, he wasn't alone. In Washington, they gave him that money not just because of his talent, his name, his cachet, and the fact that they needed to buffer their secondary, but also because they knew that they're going to be playing zone schemes. They're going to be employing that. So what you did was grab a guy that you knew you would need, because Breland being back there by himself, or with an aging D'Angelo Hall who could still play, you needed some assistance. You needed a name. You drafted some kid in the 3rd round to play corner, where you were ultimately able to get rid of Culliver and unload him. So they buffered their secondary, because that's a problem. Then you look at Kerrigan and the crew, and you look at this rookie, Preston Smith, who led all rookies with 8 sacks last year. If you're capable of getting to the passer more and you're playing zone, then obviously, like Darren is alluding to, you're going to have a limited amount of time to get at the quarterback. Therefore, you got Josh Norman, who's going to look even better because of that, not to mention the fact that he's going to have help. It's not some kind of matchup with him against Odell Beckham Jr., because if we're being real about it, is there anybody that you know of in the NFL? I don't care whether it's Patrick Patterson, that is a bad boy, whether it's Richard Sherman, or my man Joe Hayden in Cleveland, who don't get enough love, but he gonna get it here because Joe Hayden's a bad boy. Okay, so let's be real. Can anyone up here definitively, and you know your football too, Molly, can anybody sit here right now and say that anybody in the NFL can guard Odell Beckham Jr. by themselves?
No.
One-on-one?
No.
Well, then what's the problem?
Here's the problem. Well, first of all, let me start by saying Josh Norman's a good player. I thought he was a crazy great player, like top 3 defensive player for a while, and then I saw certain things that had me back off that and say, no, this is a zone corner. And don't forget, Washington's the kind of place like Champ Bailey, when they traded Clinton Portis when running backs still had a lot of value, and Portis was like, I mean, he was just a flash. You couldn't even see. They traded Portis in his prime for Champ Bailey. They value shutdown corners at a point when Champ Bailey was the best corner in the game. That's not what they're getting here. They're not getting a shutdown corner here. Now, I'll even give him some credit as even not to try and just win the argument, that he's more mature than Odell. And the fact that Odell had never dropped a pass where he was targeted and just drops the pass in his career, and he dropped 2 that day, I don't think that's a coincidence. I think that Norman applied enough psychological, at least, pressure to Odell that it rattled him. Yeah. And you even hear Odell's comments since then. Odell's still fixated on this dude, and Norman's like, yo, why are you still talking about me? And Odell's the much more famous player and considered even better at his position. I'm not going to argue that. And I also understand if you're going to run zone and different things, he's a very useful player, Josh Norman. I get that. This is my issue. The NFL is a hard cap league. In a hard cap league, the job of a GM before anything else is to properly price commodities. In this case, players. You better be able to put the prices right. You better be able to price that properly, because every dollar you overpay for one guy is a dollar you can't pay for another guy. Now I ask you this. Is Josh Norman worth a $50 million guarantee?
Go ahead, Darren.
Hey, you know what? If the Washington Redskins are willing to pay what they paid him, whatever it is. But listen,
I'm not saying that's not his market value. I'm saying should they have?
I think did
they properly price him?
Look, come on. I do. I absolutely do. Now, listen, I haven't always been a Josh Norman fan. Have not. And it took me until last year to watch from week 6 on to see what kind of player he is. This is what you're getting in Josh Norman. Are you getting a shutdown, follow you around corner? No, you're not getting Patrick Peterson. You're not getting Richard Sherman or maybe Darrelle Revis, but what you are getting is a guy with tremendous confidence, a guy that you feed off of. I've played with players that were half as talented as Josh Norman, but they had tremendous confidence, and you feed off of it as a unit. And that's, I thought, when you watch Carolina play, Josh Norman was in a huddle, and he saw whoever broke the huddle, Larry Fitzgerald went that way, there went Josh Norman. He's in your face. That's what you want to see.
A smart
in your player. A smart football player that's greedy and wants it.
Here's the deal, y'all. Look at this list here, these dollars. Josh Norman's at number 1, $50 million guaranteed. Patrick Peterson's number 2, $48 million.
I get that.
Joe Hayden, $45 million, number 3. Richard Sherman, $40 million, number 4. Darrelle Revis, number 5, at $39 million. Janoris Jenkins, number 6, $28.8 million. You could make a legitimate argument that there are about 4 corners in the NFL that may be better than Josh Norman.
Absolutely.
Straight up.
Yep.
That's no disrespect to Josh Norman, all right? But let me also take into account, not only are you paying for production, but you also pay for potential, which is something that we try to gloss over, but that's a reality. Josh Norman is 28. Josh Norman is not only 28, but this dude was from some nondescript school in Carolina, Coastal Carolina, if I remember correctly, okay? Worked his way up, worked his way through the practice squad and beyond. He didn't even want to leave Carolina. He just wanted what he thought his worth was, and he wanted them to break the bank for him. Fair enough. What I'm saying to you is that when you are 28 years of age and you went through the terrain that he went through, wasn't the first-round pick, wasn't the seventh-round pick, okay? He went, and you work your way onto a National Football League team and get to a point where you establish yourself from being some nondescript dude on a practice squad to being one of the elite corners in the game, because just because you might not be top 4 don't make you elite.
That's right.
When you combine that with the fact that the need for the team that you went to is similar to the system you played in Carolina. You combine that with the fact that you went from Carolina in the NFC South to the NFC East, where only one team was over 500 and everybody else stuck up the joint and wet the bed. I'm sorry. That justifies the dollars.
Well,
that justifies the dollars.
I'm happy he got his money.
I know that. I know that, but I'm saying it justifies
it.
I'm saying it justifies it if you're the Redskins.
Look, I get it. Also, he's the next man up, and this is how it works. Whoever the latest really good player is resets the market.
That's right.
That's generally how it works. I just think if you're going to guarantee the most dollars in the NFL at the position to a corner, that guy should be a shutdown corner. There aren't that many of them, I get it, but I don't think that's Norman.
Well, I'm saying you don't think that's Norman, but my problem is this. Let's look at the Redskins. Let's look at the fact that they're 9-7. Let's look at the fact that they franchise tagged their quarterback at $19.9 million. Let's look at the fact that they were the lone team over 500, that they've been a playoff, that they are a playoff team. Now, they haven't made back-to-back playoff spots since 96, 97, okay? And they haven't. And
they ain't going to do it this time either.
Well, they may not, but we don't know that. We don't know that. Questions about the Giants' defense, no matter how much money they spent. Questions about the Eagles all over. Question about the health and the psyche of your Dallas Cowboys. But they're not knuckleheads, but their actions are indicative of knuckleheadedness. Okay? So you got all of that going on. It's just the truth, Darren. It's just the truth. So I'm just saying, if you look at Washington, you go out, you get Norman. You draft another corner in the 3rd round. You still got Breland, who is elevating, okay? You still got D'Angelo Hall, who is experienced. You got the Ryan Kerrigan. You got a rookie that's got 8 sacks on his docket, backing up Kerrigan. You've got a team with a potential pass rush. Now, they give up with too many yards rushing on the first time. That was their impediment on defense, believe it or not. It wasn't their passing defense. It was the fact that they gave up over 5 yards or a rush on first downs. So you take all of that in consideration. If you're in the process of cleaning this up, which Josh Norman's presence will help assist in that matter, then I think it's a good deal.
If the point is that they are at a moment of like extreme leverage for a player where the right guy can put them over the top, a tipping point, right?
Absolutely.
Like Gladwell can tip them in the right direction, and Norman is that guy, then maybe you can justify the $50 million.
And I'm saying to you, Max,
you better get it done now.
But here's what I'm saying to you, Max. Maybe, just maybe, what you're not saying is what you need to say. The Giants stunk up the joint. to Dallas Cowboys stunk up the joint. Maybe what you're really saying is that the Redskins were somewhat fraudulent because the other teams, including your Giants, to some degree my Giants, were relatively weak, and certainly your Cowboys. Oh, please.
I was surrounded by Giants. I didn't know this.
Please. No, I'm a Steelers guy. I'm a New Yorker, but I'm a Steelers guy.
From way back.
Come on, man.
I love my Steelers.
You need to stop.
Big Blue.
The
Who said that? That's not
the division is up for grabs again, as it always is. All right, you're going to get to
Leave you.
That's right.
You're going to get to see Beckham versus Norman September 25th at MetLife. That one, week 3. Darren, thank you for being here.
By the way,
it's always good to see you.
There's 2 moments in my life as a football fan that are sickest. Number 1 on the list is when Tim Tebow threw that pass to Demaryius Thomas against the Steelers in the playoffs.
Yeah.
The other is when
Go ahead, give it to us.
Neil O'Donnell threw that interception.
Go ahead,
and
give
the
it
Dallas
to us.
Cowboys beat the
That's
Steelers
our
in the
ring.
Super Bowl.
You know what?
Oh, please.
I'll let you wear it.
I never heard of Larry Johnson
I'll let you
before or
wear it,
after.
Brees.
But that day, Larry Brown, I'm sorry, Larry Johnson, Larry Brown.
Molly and I have some pretty good memories of recent Giants Super Bowls, too. I can't think of them offhand, but
just a couple.
remember them undoing the greatest team of all time.
I remember
doing
the
it again.
Giants as well. I remember those days.
Okay.
I'm just saying.
Man, it's time for you to go.
Let's leave it there.
Guys, Sports
Thank
Center's
you,
calling,
Darren.
man. Sports
You
Center's
didn't think we
calling.
could get through this
Sports
full
Center's
show
calling,
without
man.
addressing Draymond Green. Well, he found himself in another compromising situation over the weekend, sending out an inappropriate Snapchat picture. We will react to that and how it could affect his future when we come back.